Good morning to everybody. Good morning to the viewers. Yeah, it's 10 to 2 in the morning, but good morning, everybody in the Philippines.
Okay, I guess I want to start first, Chris. I know that your chamber joined most other business groups supporting calls to reopen the economy. But Chris, I mean, look at Europe. What's your read on what's happening there? Access to vaccines are very high, but many are now struggling with lockdowns again. In Germany and Austria, which we've reported, they're seeing cases higher than at any time in this pandemic. Do you think that the Philippines might be dangerously aggressive when it comes to taking away the restrictions in the name of reopening the economy, putting everyone at risk? What do you think?
Well, look, first of all, I think the Philippines has moved in a very careful way and obviously taken inputs into the ITF from people like Joey Concepcion, who we work closely with. And I think the last approach, which is obviously the alert system and the granulated lockdowns, is the way forward. In case of Europe, let me just talk specifically about the UK, because obviously we're the British Chamber. The UK has kept open. It's watching the situation very carefully. But I think there's big differences. And I think the key there, again, of course, is the vaccination rate. The UK now, in terms of second dose, is already at 80% of the population. And it's now moving into the boosters, which, of course, is the same case which is now happening in the Philippines. I believe, obviously, they're looking at boosters for A1 and medical frontliners. So you've got to look at Europe, and then you've got to look at the uptake. And I think also in the case of the Philippines, I have to give praise to also Secretary Galvez now and working with the private sector to bring in the vaccination. So in case of Europe, I think if you look at UK, you look at places like Portugal, which has got a very high vaccination rate, close to 90%. The key here now is the booster rates. The key, of course, is also obviously managing that. And I think the other thing in the case of Europe is its hospitalization rate. It's compared to the previous wave, they're actually still managing it quite well. And obviously, they'll be taking it country by country. Clearly, certain countries, Austria obviously had to take action. But I think that's key. And I think I have to say for the Philippines, and we appreciate the efforts done. And I think also just linking it to one of your other items, we're very pleased to see also one of our efforts, which is on the quarantine now, which will be a boost, obviously, to the travel, because that's now been reduced down to approximately 3 days. Yeah. And that will also facilitate and support that sector. So again, every government has to watch and go carefully, but we're very pleased with the progress. It's a question of keep on managing it and working together.
So you think, Chris, we're not overdoing it? Because I know that there is an expert here, a doctor, who is pushing for what he calls the Swiss cheese model. The more layers of protection, the better. And that's face mask, that's face shield, that's keeping quarantine restrictions in place. You think we're not too fast in peeling away these restrictions, considering we're not even 80% in this, second dose vaccination yet, unlike the UK, as you mentioned?
Well, look, I mean, you've got to look at also the rates. So in the Philippines, obviously, a bit of focus was in Metro Manila. The Metro Manila rates are much higher, as I understand it. And I have to give also full credit to a lot of the LG units for their efforts there. They worked very well indeed. And I think the answer is no. I think the government's taken a very measured approach. It's taken inputs. I think granulated lockdowns is the way forward. I think also the way that the Philippines is now opening up in a very careful way, taking the inputs from business groups, from different sectors. And I think you're seeing that in terms of how we can move forward and managing in a very specific way. So, no, I think that's the way forward. And we're very pleased, as I said, to see the quarantine, which we supported. And again, I think all credit to groups like Joey Concepcion. I think they've done a great work helping as well in terms of the vaccine supply.
Chris, let's shift gears now. The Retail Trade Liberalization Act is a big project of yours. I know it's now on the president's desk, awaiting his signature finally. This is supposed to lower the minimum paid-up capital requirements for foreign retailers to enter the Philippines from $2.5 million to $500,000. Do we have estimates, Chris, how much more FDIs or businesses could come our way once this is passed?
Look, I don't think we have an estimate yet, but I think it's a clear signal, right? And I think so first of all, we're very excited. It's a certified bill, and you're right to say it's been transmitted to Malacanang. We understand on the 10th of November, and we're sure because obviously it's been supported by the Secretary of Trade and Investment, by Secretary of Finance. And of course, this is one of the start of the key economic liberalization. And we have geared up to extensively promote this, of course, with that law getting passed into action. We've seen a lot of interest. Despite the pandemic, we've seen interest in the retail sector, which is one of our key focus areas. We've seen people looking at, obviously, food, healthy foods, wine and spirits. So what we think is this will be a beginning of a signal. But I also want to just stress that the Retail Trade Liberalization Act, which obviously will be the first to be signed in, we're obviously also, along with many other groups, supporting the Foreign Investment Act and the Public Services Act. And I think this is the package, because this is the time to get these measures forward, which will then support the inflow and increasing, obviously, the anticipation of foreign direct investment, and therefore support the growth rates for the economy. So very excited to see it get signed in.
Chris, you know, your voice is very important in these issues because the UK is a very big contributor to our FDIs. In fact, I understand for the second quarter of this year, you guys accounted for the biggest chunk, 56% of total foreign investments at 12.5 billion, followed by South Korea and the US. For the Retail Trade Liberalization Act, just one quick follow-up though, Chris. How has the pandemic changed the dynamics? I imagine some groups, local groups, may be a little bit more protective of the local MSMEs who have taken a beating from the pandemic and would want to protect them from the entry of more foreign retailers. What do you say to that?
Well, I say two things, actually. I think the arrival of foreign or British retailers, British investment will actually be a support to the SMEs. We actually think that that's what will help. And we think opening up the economy will actually drive competition, actually tends to drive and stimulate the market. The other thing which I'd just like to highlight to you as well is that we've also been working and highlighting the opportunity to our retailers on the e-commerce. We ran a very extensive webinar back in July even. And I think there's a great opportunity here to match companies. One of the things the British Chamber does in partnership with the British Embassy, because we work closely with the Department of International Trade and our new ambassador, Ambassador Beaufils. And therefore, what we're looking to do is to drive that as a benefit, obviously, to the UK, but it's also going to be a benefit to the Philippine companies. So obviously, we clearly see this as a win-win for both.
Chris, I know that for Britain, the British economy, to offset some losses from Brexit, Britain has come up with a 12-point Made in the UK, Sold to the World scheme. And this is precisely the aim, to boost exports in goods and services from £600 billion last year to £1 trillion by helping UK companies unleash their full exporting potential. Are you seeing other opportunities for UK-Philippine trade? I know there's this new development for pork.
Well, look, yes, indeed. In terms of pork, that's a very specific, as you know. So obviously, we've worked closely. There's been obviously an increase in need for pork supply, particularly obviously as the herds were affected here in the Philippines by the African swine flu. And the UK is well known for the quality, its traceability. And we've seen 150% increase in pork exports to the Philippines if you compare it for the same time period last year. We just recently held last Thursday an event, and again, we had 6 major UK companies, and we had another 12 Philippine companies. So the question is matching the companies together, because I think the key in all of this is to create long-term relationships. And I think that's actually, coming back to your point, what the UK wants, and it sees the Philippines as a very important trading area. And as we said many times on your program, actually, we are promoting, obviously, the opportunity to work in the Philippines, to invest, but also as a gateway to Southeast Asia. So we're looking to see how that can develop. We can see those pork imports or exports from the UK increasing even more going forward.
All right. And on that optimistic note, Chris, always a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you so much for joining us. We're looking forward to our next conversation.
You too, can I say, and a very good day to all the viewers. And it's a great pleasure to be here on ABS-CBN again. Thank you very much.
Thank you.